Hi everyone, welcome to Uncomfortable Conversations, the series that talks about what everybody thinks but nobody actually says out loud. Now, let me set some expectations for today's episode because it's slightly different. I have a very special guest with me today. Now, I normally try and kind of keep my cool on podcasts and I don't really get nervous when I do them because, hey, it's my kind of thing and it's what I'm doing. But today, not going to lie, I'm proper fangirling. I'm proper in the moment of, oh my God, I'm talking to Paul Cash, the Paul Cash. Today, I am joined by the one and only maestro of marketing, Paul Cash. Now, I feel like I'm setting you up a little bit here, Paul.
So you are.
let me set the scene a little bit here. So, for the past, I've gotten 15 years? Maybe it's got to be around about 15 years. So, I first heard Paul talk and met him at B2B Ignite. It's got to be somewhere in the region of that long ago. And since then, Paul has literally been this guiding voice in my career as a marketer, how I think, how I work, how I show up. But he's not just an exceptional marketer. He's more than a thought leader. He's a true brand creator. He is a design genius who literally I can go to him with the craziest ideas, and I do, and Paul will immediately start drawing it and start creating it and start coming up with ideas of understanding, yes, let's do this. And he'll push it so far out of the box and so far out of your comfort zone. It's actually brilliant. To be able to work with that is absolutely amazing. So I'm super, super excited to be able to talk to him today. Because he really is, Paul, seriously, the person who has just sparked my passion around humanising marketing, particularly in a B2B world, and really spearheaded me on a mission within my own roles and within teams where I've worked to really think about how we get to the humanising of marketing. I talk quite a lot, and something again which I've kind of picked up from you over the years, about empathy, about leading with empathy in brands and in marketing, and you know, sparked from listening to you and watching things that you've done over the years, but also from your book, from Humanising B2B, which I've read, I've given it to said book. There, in fact, is said book. I've given it to my team. I actually, and I think you sent me a copy of it once because I sent you a really sneaky email, got a copy and put a little personal message in it and gave it to my new CEO in a new role so that he would understand marketing and branding and what it was all about. So, you know, it's kind of foundational really in terms of where I've kind of come from in my career and journey as well. So Paul, super excited. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really happy that you're here.
No, and obviously very kind words, so I appreciate those. And you know, we do this job and we try to put as much of ourselves into it. I think I've been lucky, you've been lucky that we are probably accidental B2B marketeers that started this journey, you know, 20-30 years ago, and it's been a bit of a mission and a bit of a calling to try and see B2B develop and grow and mature as a platform in marketing. And you know, there are a huge amount of challenges along that journey, and the fight goes on and the fight changes all the time. But you know, not just Rooster Punk, but other agencies and other client marketeers, I feel a real sense of community and camaraderie about this fight we're on to try and make B2B the best it can be. And you know, I think it's also true to say that there is a bit of an existential crisis going on within marketing and the role of marketing in B2B, and that's a challenge. But again, great to hear those words, and you know, happy to have inspired you on your journey.
Got to hear more merging around, certainly conversations I have within businesses and people. There is now more merging between people are starting to see it's human to human. Let's forget the way that people do B2C, because they're still people, they're still humans. And if you're engaging with a person, doesn't really matter what they're buying or where they're buying it from, because they're going to buy led on an emotion and how they feel and a brand that actually speaks to them and has some kind of a resonance and relationship with them in the way that they feel. Ultimately, I always say you've got to like the people. If you don't like them, you're not going to want to do business with them. And it doesn't matter how big your budget is and how many layers of a buying committee there are. If you're the front person that makes that phone call and has that conversation, if you don't have a good brand experience, and you don't have a connection, and everything's a little bit prescriptive and directive, and it doesn't flow naturally, you're probably not going to do business with them.
No, and I think it's true to say, and that's one of the principles of humanizing B2B, which is, likability can be transformational. So we all know that we like to work with people who we get on with, and we like to buy from people who we get on with. And the challenge has always been, how do we, in this very digital world, make the brands that show up, whether it's through content, through a website, through advertising, how do we engineer that likability at the top of the funnel? So by the time people pick up the phone and speak to a salesperson or hear an influencer in market, that there's likability at that side too. And that's been the bit that's been a real challenge, how to help complex B2B brands show up in a likable way, not just from a product point of view and, that tired old speeds and feeds kind of argument. And that's why we've seen the rise of emotion, the rise of storytelling, the focus on people, not just product, but product communications, the product narrative, conservatism. These are magnets that are hugely powerful in B2B and drain, a lot of our marketeers of energy, because the pull is so great. Commercial leaders, they love conservatism. They don't necessarily embrace creativity as much as they could. And yet when times are tough, you would think that actually those are the things to try and embrace. And so, yeah, it's tough for sure. But,
yeah,
but we fight on.
We will keep. So today's episode, the sort of the theme, if you like, is centered around just this. It's that thought that brand shouldn't be a luxury. It's a staple, and how we need to, again, humanize more, get more into the heart of B2B marketing in an industry, particularly within B2B, that is so leads obsessed. It's so obsessed with leads and MQLs and scorecards and dashboards and tactical, almost firefighting. And I get myself into trouble quite a bit, because I come into new roles, I come into businesses, and I'm kind of confronted with sales of almost a sort of shopping list of, we just got to get all of this done, Louise, all of this done, and they just keep, it's this almost rinse and repeat effect of, they're just going to throw stuff out there and see what sticks. But then they get into the problem of, and I see this so often, they've thrown so much out there that didn't really have a lot of thought process around it. It was very quick, very tactical, very sort of 2-page PDF. Somebody then actually, heaven help us, someone actually responds to that, comes back to the business and says, okay, tell me more. And then it's panic stations. Everyone's like, oh my God, what do we do? Someone wants to talk to us about it. we haven't built story, we haven't built narrative, we haven't built framework. We can't actually do anything with that. It's, they kind of run, it's almost that sort of just constant running on the hamster wheel. And you just need, sometimes you need to fall off. You need to actually fall off. You need to take a step back, and you actually need to look at it and just go, do you know what? It's not working. It's not, let's just stop. Let's hit reset.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges is that when you speak to commercial leaders in 99% of B2B organizations, the go-to engines for growth for them are M&A. It's through innovation of new products and services. It's geographic expansion. It's hiring senior players. It's kind of cold sell. Those are the go-to ways that most commercial leaders will think about growth. Marketing as a growth engine doesn't sit at that top table. Lots of companies fight for it, and we have, I think, in marketing 3 engines that we can play with to drive that. And brand is one, been very underused for most companies. Authority and thought leadership type marketing is another, and the third is demand. And the focus has always been, let's just really use the demand engine as a way to grow. And we have these silos. Brand sits over here, thought leadership sits over here, demand sits over there. The beauty of those things when they're connected together. Yeah, we hear about this phrase brand and demand or brand to demand. To me, what's missing has always been the authority piece that sits in the middle. When you get them working together, you have the opportunity to amplify whatever those big business outcomes we're chasing, whether it's profitability, whether it's revenue, whether it's ARR, whatever it might be. And that, I think, is the challenge we all face, is this integration of these three engines to really show that marketing can not just drive that incremental change, which is, what happens when you just use like a demand gen engine, but actually the transformational change that every business ultimately, wants to enjoy.
And it's interesting, you touched on earlier around those sort of the three key pillars in the areas and around thought leadership and brand. And yes, unfortunately, so many businesses do tend to, it's almost that fire sale panic of just let's go do some demand. Let's just go do some demand. And then they'll go and just do, and they'll throw a bunch of tactics at the wall. And then oftentimes they'll then regroup and they'll come back together. And the term thought leadership is so overused, I find, within meetings, within businesses, because you end up with, you get a committee, you get a room full of people who aren't marketers, because hey, everybody that's not a marketer knows how to do marketing, and they're all really great. They're all really great at it. But it all comes back down to everybody around the room will throw out, oh, we need to do more thought leadership. Why aren't we doing more thought? God, just let's go and do more thought leadership. And it almost becomes weaponized. And then the true value of actually what thought leadership is, of being a leader with a thought that's different, and actually sticking your head above the parapet and going out there within whatever industry you're saying you're in, and saying, well, no, hey, we've got this thought, we've got this opinion, and it might be a bit disruptive and it might be a bit challenging, but it's our opinion. We're not just going to follow the herd. We're actually going to come over here and do something different. And that gets so lost and diluted. It's such a shame, because there's so much value in that. And you and I have probably both seen the value that can come from being disruptive, from being different, from actually being brave and being bold and putting yourself out there and doing something so just radically different. It gets attention because it's so different and bold. I mean, we'll touch on. I've got to mention it because you've obviously, Rooster Punk have just recently done such a thing, a very, very bold, very, very brave, very quite blatant, go out there, smack people around the face with it so brilliantly on LinkedIn. So just talk to me about, for anybody that hasn't seen it, Rooster Punk, we've just talked about it. It's all about humanizing. It's all about empathy. It's about being real. It's about doing things differently. So what was it, last week, I think, maybe the week before? You guys rebranded to B2B land, or I'm just going to say B2B land, because that's how I read it when I saw it on the hat. I read B2B land. Just talk me through this, because it's one of these moments that's just instantly everybody talked about it, and it was just absolutely genius. It was brilliant.
Yeah, I guess obviously we've spent probably the last 15, 16 months thinking about our own position in the market, thinking about our own challenge of rebranding, both from a positioning point of view as well as a visual identity point of view. And we kind of knew that in the cold reality of the microcosm of B2B we live in, that's not a massive story in its own right. So we wanted to try and see if we could practice what we preach a little bit, which obviously is trying to use creativity and imagination, a bit of humor as ways of being able to get eyeballs and attention. And so we did just that. We effectively did a spoof launch before the real launch. One of the good things about doing a spoof like this is that we are so well known in our little micro universe for humanizing B2B, for representing creativity, that to then do a spoof where we say we've just given up on all of that, and actually we've lost the fight, and buyers don't buy creativity, they buy same old B2B marketing. So why don't we just kind of, cut our losses and join the pack, as it were. And so we did that. So we used Joel Harrison of ex B2B marketing, and he interviewed me, and I had to play that deadpan kind of David Brent-esque, style of character to kind of just say, yeah, we've given up. And we put 4 videos out the week before we did the launch. And when we obviously set this up, we wanted 50% of people to kind of believe it's true, but we also know that 50% of people would kind of get the gag. And the gag was that we've rebranded as B2B land. But obviously hidden in plain sight is the word bland. And obviously that was the gag. And we had a little website we put up, which is really beige, and the language we used was rational B2B marketing, etc. And we obviously put it out there on LinkedIn, and it was kind of insane how it literally played out that 50% thought it was a gag, 50% didn't. And I got some priceless messages from people, well-intended, saying, Paul, I've had to send you a message on email. I didn't want to out you on LinkedIn, but I used to be like the brand guardian of XYZ company, and I've seen that the word bland is like literally alive in your new name. Is that an error? You might want to change it. And so from that point of view, it was brilliant. And yeah, the real launch happened on Monday of this week, which was anything but bland, which was obviously us relaunching the agency around this Humanising 2.0, but also this idea about the joy of growth, which we're really passionate about. I think the grind in B2B has taken over the last 2 or 3 years, and we feel unapologetic about wanting to fight for joy, because we're not accountants. We obviously know that we need to be more commercial and numbers focused, but part of what we do is representing the companies and using marketing as a way to celebrate and to use imagination and to attract customers through showmanship as well as salesmanship. And so joy was a really important word that we wanted to bring back to life. So we did that. Yeah.
Brilliant, absolutely amazing. And what's the response been since that you've kind of come clean and it's all gone out there with the actual rebranding?
Yeah, it's been great. Obviously, the true test with all these things is this going to help us generate more opportunities? We're not silly to think, oh look, we just had a whole load more impressions, we've had a load more visitors to our website. Those are all vanity metrics. For us, it's just like any commercial business. Has this helped us influence a new audience out there that will look at us in a different way and think, oh, okay, those guys seem like a decent agency, we'll give them a chance. And literally on the day we launched, we had a new pitch brief come in specifically because someone had seen the B2B land campaign, and this was a marketing director of reasonable sized fintech, and then they instructed their marketing person to get in contact with us, and that was great to hear. So it had an instant impact from that point of view. We've got to win the pitch, obviously, but it's good to get the opportunity.
Brilliant, amazing, and it looks great. Absolutely looks great. I still want a hoodie.
Yes, we're going to spend a lot of time getting the merch ready, because I think there's a big demand for some quality B2B fashion merch.
Right, so let's zoom out a little bit then. So you've been advocating for emotional, really human-led marketing messaging B2B for over a decade. Why? And I think even just saying that out loud, for over a decade, why do you think brand still struggles so much to be taken seriously in those boardroom conversations? Why are we still banging our heads against the wall?
So I mentioned this earlier, there's these clouds of crisis. This is the way I kind of play it out in my brain using the metaphor of clouds and crisis. So there is a crisis of conservatism that will never go away in B2B. There's a crisis of creativity, which is paired with that, which leads to a crisis of confidence. And the challenge always is that as marketeers, obviously we have this tool called creativity that we want to be able to use to our best ability to impact the companies we work with. But often creativity is seen as a risk by commercial leaders, and they then go back to this conservatism, and it's never going to change. Yeah. What excites me is that when it comes to brand, if you're a B2C company and you make sugared sweets, all your competitors are doing kind of really cool, crazy things to kind of win in the sugared sweets marketplace. In B2B, no one's really doing it. So those leaders who understand the power of brand, and let's get this right, brand is a belief system. It's a belief system that touches culture, it touches leadership, it touches product. You have to really feel the potential. But it's like you know, the metaphor of growing a forest. Yeah, you know that if you plant 20 saplings in a field and you look after them and you water them and you tend them, you will get a forest. And brand is like that. But if you want to rip them up after 6 weeks because they're not growing quick enough, it's just a waste of time. So you have to have a sense of belief that what you're doing is the right thing. And of course, it doesn't happen overnight, but brand compounds over time. This is the thing that most leaders, I think, just ignore. It's like interest. Yeah, you put £1,000 away, you know, every year, that compounds, and all of a sudden, you know, 10 years later, you've got, you know, a significant amount of money. And the challenges, obviously, of quarterly driven organizations, you know, is the CEO going to be there after 5 years? Is the CMO going to be there? Those are obviously real challenges about how we actually use brand when it's not an instant return. But the opportunities, I think, to use it are so incredibly powerful for B2B companies that, yeah, you think the amount of clever brains that exist at a commercial level would see the opportunity, but it's a constant fight, and it's a tough one. There's no so.
Do you think I've seen this, and it's that it's almost, I think sometimes I see very, very good marketing leaders who do it very, very well. I see less confident marketing leaders who struggle with that, and I often think and maybe it comes with age and experience, and you kind of almost got to go through the battlefield and come out the other side to earn your stripes to actually then go and be able to fight for it. But if you can sit and in the room and have those conversations and get your advocates on board with you, there's always those one or two people who, if you can, and I'm very, very bizarrely as a marketer, I'm very data driven in my approach. I love the creativity, I love sitting and writing and coming up with ideas, but I also love the data. I love digging into the journey metrics and the stats and understanding what's working and what's not, and how people are doing and using what we're doing. And I kind of find that what certainly works for me, if I merge both of those together, if I can present usually the most anti-brand person in the room with some quantifiable insights and data that can show the value of why we're doing it. And that's sometimes those kind of gradual incremental steps, which might be, you know, we'll come back again to sort of true thought leadership. You know, you've actually got a thought leadership strategy that you can then take people through and you can measure against to say, we said we were going to do all of this. Here's what we've actually achieved from it. As a result of that, the CEOs out there on the talk circuit, you know, the technical people are out there, customers are now having conversations. I think it's having those. Having the confidence to be able to articulate the value of doing it, maybe understanding a little bit better some of your metrics, some of your data points, but also just having those anecdotal stories in your back pocket that you can actually use to talk the language of whoever it is that you're trying to kind of win over and have that conversation with, so that you're putting it into a perspective that they understand and that they're going to get.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when we talk about brand, I think 80% of the attention we give is to the corporate brand. But the power of employer brand, and now the role of employee thought leadership, so that authentic side of employees doing something on LinkedIn, whether you're a product evangelist, whether you're a customer service person, people believe and respond to those posts much more effectively than they do to, you know, the corporate brand saying it. And then the power of personal brand. So a founder, a CEO, a sales executive, a CTO, to influence a sales cycle in an authentic way is really powerful. So again, when you can connect the corporate brand with the employer brand, with the personal brands of leaders, you really do start to see the impact on a sales cycle. And it's a lot easier to, you know, understand those metrics where, you know, I think sometimes the power of the corporate brand gets lost because it's harder to measure. But you know, if you've influenced somebody as, say, a thought leader who's, you know, been to one of your events, or they've seen you speak and you're a real name, and, you know, you get on a sales RFP, that's far more tangible. And that's what I definitely think when we talk about humanizing 1.0 and now humanizing 2.0. It really is the rise of the employee and the rise of key leaders and their personal brands influencing that end outcome is where we're heading, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And you talk about this in your book, in your Humanising B2B book. You lay out what I think is quite a powerful case around storytelling, around connection. What do you think? What do you think has changed? What have you seen those sort of dynamic shifts? What's changed for the better since you published it? Conversations you're hearing, and where do you think there's still so much room for growth?
So again, we have these 5 principles in the book. So, this shift away from product to people. We talk about, the role of emotion to be at your marketing core, the role of purpose, that's actionable within the business. We talk about the role of storytelling, and we talk about likability. All of those things are really important. What I would say is that we're leaning more into this shift from product to people, as I just talked about, in terms of using those as authentic ways to be able to bring brands closer to the customers or the buyer. Storytelling is incredibly powerful at a corporate level, at an employee level, at a leadership level. And again, when we started talking about storytelling 10 years ago, I mean, I think you were there at one of those Ignite presentations I did. People just looking at me, what's this word storytelling in B2B? Surely that's a B2C thing. And we've come on so far now that every time I go to some kind of industry event and I hear CMOs or marketing leaders talking, the word story or storytelling is literally the thing that most people talk about. So we're still at the beginning. It's like a really new thing in B2B, and we have to keep on leaning into how we use that. So that's definitely on the rise for sure, and not going to go anywhere. It's just how we help. As a CMO, you've almost got to be like an architect one day, a lead generator the next, a creative, also now a talent manager. You've got to be able to look at the talent in your organization. How can I harness that talent in a way that's going to affect some kind of sales outcome? So again, it's just a new skill to be able to learn.
Definitely. And you've just kind of touched on and alluded to there something that I want us to pick up. So we hear a lot, and we're seeing this kind of almost rise in this demand gen culture. It's like the new buzzwords coming in. Everything, we kind of moved away from lead generation, and now everyone's almost on the bandwagon of demand gen. Where do we end up with performance metrics. It's almost a kind of taking over from creativity, I'd say. Everybody is so focused on the performance side of things, and how it's being measured, and the almost to the nth degree going into the data side of things and being data driven. It's almost to the adverse effect and almost killing creativity. What do you think is, and are you seeing this, the almost the creative cost of that shift of how is that impacting brands in the marketing world, particularly where so much focus is maybe being put on the tactic and the result rather than that. Let's just be different. Let's just do something bold. Let's do something brave. Let's actually put something out there that does stop people and start a conversation. They're almost, I feel, within B2B, companies are almost scared to be bold and brave because they don't want people to talk about them, which just makes no sense at all, because you want people to be talking about you. You want to be memorable.
Yeah, I think as an agency, the trigger that's in market when we get a client who comes to us and they say, look, we've got a fairly staid brand in market, we've got incredibly tough sales targets to hit, huge ambition in the business, and we know that if we carry on with the same playbook, we're probably all going to be out of a job. Okay, so they then look quite clinically and go, we need to use creativity. We need to do something that's going to be disruptive because we're not going to hit our sales numbers. And I think that pressure that somebody feels is the trigger to how creativity gets used or weaponized within B2B marketing. When that pressure isn't there, it's easy just to kind of get back to a safe set of, okay, let's just build this sales engine, let's do these incremental results, let's have these vanity metrics here, let's create the scorecards, and no one really challenges it. And what's exciting to me is, we all want to help a business go on a journey to have some kind of significant or transformational outcome off the back of using brand or marketing. And so we get excited to hear those challenges, tough markets, tough conditions, a stayed brand, of which there are many. Creativity is the way you break that down and go, right, let's get behind it. And we've got a few clients on at the moment who are really stepping into some very bold, exciting creative, because they know that if they don't, they're never going to have the chance to hit those numbers. And so this is not about trying to change the ambitions of companies. It's not about trying to say, no, those numbers are unachievable. Absolutely, the company has the right to be able to say, we need to hit these numbers. But then you have to question, well, what's the playbook to do it? And if you just go back to same old, nothing is going to change.
Exactly. That definition of insanity, isn't it? Keep doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Yeah.
So let's talk bravery, because it is, for marketing particularly, it results come when you can take that bold, brave step, when you do actually put yourself out there and you almost show that vulnerability and do something differently. But in risk-averse organisations, because let's face it, particularly in B2B and in tech, fear often drives decision-making. We've seen it, and it happens. How can marketers get their stakeholders on board to almost, in the boardroom and those senior levels, get them to bet on brand over quick fix tactics?
Yeah, it's a good one. And this is not research that we've created, but I think the B2B Institute at LinkedIn has been great at putting in new ideas and content into our marketing community. And one of those ideas that is quite recent is that we see this FOMO effect in B2C, but we have this FOMI effect, which is fear of messing up, which is more powerful than B2B. Which get back to one of these biases, which was we're more scared of making the wrong decision than we are making the right decision. And that kind of paralysis of decision making is prevalent everywhere. People's careers are on the line. Nobody wants to fuck up, and lose their job in that respect. So that's a tough psychological nuance to navigate as a marketeer. So how do we counter that? Well, I guess this piece of research that I saw recently, the number one driver for making a decision about working with a company is that in 2 years' time, if that result doesn't go the right way, do I have the right ammunition to be able to go back to my boss and say, I did everything in my power to make that decision. These are all the things I did right, and therefore mitigate the error that was created along the way. So that's a real powerful understanding of how buyers think about making a decision. And it's often the paralysis. If we can't push it over the line, then nothing happens. So fear is, the number one thing that we're trying to battle out there. And we've got to make better arguments and use our imaginations and creativity to make people understand that, you are doing this stuff for the right reasons. And it's tough for sure.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Paul, just before we close out, is it absolutely brilliant, a massively fascinating conversation. There's so many things in there. What if you had to give one piece of advice to B2B marketers? Maybe someone's going to listen to this on the day that they're pulling together their big SLT budget presentation and they're about to go into the board to try and win some hearts and minds with what they're doing. What's one piece of advice that you would give marketers around, I'm going to call it owning the narrative. Let's focus on the storytelling side. What's something that they can arm themselves with to go into the room and be confident in what they're about to deliver?
I'm not sure I'm going to answer this exactly, but there's two things that I'd like to talk about in the context of that question. So one is that over the last 12 months, we've really seen the rise of this word trust back again in B2B. Every 5 or 6 years, the word trust comes back. It's like the word that everyone anchors. Of course, we need our customers to trust us. If they trust us, they'll buy from us, and everything seems to make sense. But we talk about trust like it's air. Like it's essential, it's invisible, it's assumed, but no one really measures it. We talk about it, but we don't really measure it. And I think the irony is that when we talk about trust and we say, yeah, we need to win, and therefore we need trust to be there, brand is actually how you earn trust. So actually they're both connected. And I think sometimes people don't see that. I mean, how do you build trust? You build it through likability, by creating communications and a bit of showmanship and excitement in the market, by connecting with people emotionally. That's how you build trust, just like you do on a one-to-one relationship. And I think we need to get smarter that if we believe that trust is the top of the pyramid, how do we engineer that trust? Brand is an absolute go-to tool to make sense of that. So that's one thing that is kind of in play. The second thing, and this is coming from the world of B2C, there is Peter Field and Adam Morgan, who's the kind of the challenger brand guru, face this same challenge of creativity within B2C. And they're forever talking to CFOs and commercial leaders about why you need to use creativity, etc. And it often falls on deaf ears. So they flipped the narrative. They actually looked at the cost of dull rather than the cost of creativity. And what they found is that brands that spend money being dull and conservative spend 10 times more than an interesting brand. So the notion that you're a CFO and you're going out with your traditional conservative B2B marketing, that's costing you 10x to do it over a competitor who's actually using creativity to be interesting. So there's a cost of being conservative. There's a cost of being dull. That's a financial number. Yeah. So again, the more we can start to find these little nuggets, these little stories, and bring them to the attention of our commercial leaders, the more maybe the narrative and the story will start to change in favor of, okay, you're right, we do need to be more creative. It seems pointless spending all this money to be dull. You know, it's so I do like that as a way of just reframing the challenge we have.
Yeah, that's really powerful, and it's interesting, isn't it? And it's so true that you're gonna get more confident. You're gonna be able to have these conversations by putting in the time and the research into doing it. And I think that's maybe missing a little bit in marketing. It's something, maybe it's come with just, you know, the explosion and of information everywhere and the ease of being able to get things. We're almost, the art of research and of going online and actually digging into finding stats and stories and things that you can actually use that are industry recognizable and quotable is so powerful. It's so powerful in those boardroom conversations. I've been in conversations where I've had just a couple of stats I've maybe referenced through from a couple of different industry reports that I might have seen. You know, it could have been something that I've read on Forbes. I'm always reading stuff. I like ferret stuff away everywhere. But I'm also that person that shares stuff. I'm the person that just pings people with article of interest. Oh, I read this, so we might be interested in it. But it's so that power of knowledge of actually having all of those almost in your back pocket that you can pull out and say or whack up on a slide to try and get your point across of, well, actually, this stat has said this, and they've done this industry research, and it's you know, it's actually going to be in our favour. And then backing it up, I think, by taking that bold step and actually saying, let's just be brave. We've got nothing to lose. Let's go and do it. Let's go and try it. Let's put ourselves out there.
You know, I know you've done a previous podcast on the 95/5 rule, etc. But you know, one of the most compelling commercial narratives that's out in market at the moment is this notion of the day one list. You know, which again I think has come from Bain & Co.'s research. I think it's been backed up recently by Winter, which is kind of the online research platform, which is, you know, 90% of vendors choose somebody from what they call their day one list. And, you know, their day one list doesn't start when they come in market. It's built up of preferences that happen when you're out of market. And therefore, if you're waiting for that intent signal, that comes when someone comes in market, you're way too late, because even though 90% go for the day one list, something like 70% choose the incumbent. So it's even harder, you know, so you've really got to focus on being part of that day one list. And that's what brand does. That's what, you know, whether you're an influencer, whether you're using corporate brand or employee brand, you're finding ways to build that momentum so you are part of that you know, 3 or 4 consideration set. So that's again where brand can be a huge advantage, and authority-based marketing as well.
Yeah. Brilliant, perfect, brilliant ending point, great closing summary. Thank you, done my job for me. Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure. That everyone, that is the amazing Paul Cash. This is why I wanted him on the podcast. Just absolute. The thought process, the insight, all of that, just so much to take away there. So thank you, very much appreciate it. And if this, everyone, if this resonated with you, please share it, talk about it, keep the conversations going. You can head over, you can subscribe to the podcast. We're on Spotify. You can find us on YouTube also, or on the Marketing Human homepage. And please, as always, do drop your comments in, because they do help shape future episodes, conversations that we're having, and also on the blog as well. So Paul, thank you again. Massively useful. So much there for people to digest and take away. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks, Louise, and I'll make sure you get some merch once we've got it together.